This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, and I wanted to introduce Irene Sinclair, who's on this call. Many of you know Irene or have talked to her. She is sort of a mentor to me, and can be a mentor to all of you. She worked for 40 years teaching adult ESL and mentoring ESL teachers in the City of Detroit school system. And she has been with Oakland Literacy Council for maybe 10 years or so, helping to train tutors, mentoring tutors, tutoring herself, helping us with the training curriculum. She is really a wealth of knowledge. So she and I are going to present today's workshop together. Irene, do you want to say anything else by way of introduction?
Thank you for letting me join all of your wonderful support systems at Oakland Literacy Council. I need to hear more about Anna and Janine. They've got some special lives to share. But maybe we can do it another time. Thanks, Laurie. Let's hope we have an hour without technical failure.
Yes.
Amen.
So you should be looking at my cover slide. The topic of today's presentation is 7 ways to sharpen your students' listening skills. And we know from doing intake with our adult learners who are English language learners that being able to understand Americans is one of their greatest challenges, more so than reading. A lot of them have studied a little bit of English in their home country, but it's been book learning. They get here, Americans are speaking really fast. Sometimes they're rude with our learners. And the tutoring space is a safe place for them to really practice their listening skills so they can better navigate their life here in the United States. So what we're going to talk about in the hour that we're together is just briefly recap why listening is a tough skill, the hardest for our students to master, kind of how you can set up a listening lesson with your student. And then we're going to give you 7 strategies, different ways to approach listening skills with your learner. And then at the end, we're going to open it up for questions or for you to share ideas that you might have about listening, because collectively we all know a lot more than each one of us individually. So without further delay, I'm going to turn this over to Irene, who's going to talk a little bit about listening skills.
Thanks, Laurie. Let's look at this. During a normal day, we listen twice as much as we speak, and 4 to 5 times as much as we blank and blank. Okay, now that you have looked at that, we want you to go to the chat on your computer and fill in the blanks. Take a minute to think about what would be the words that come there. I guess we can have them put it up on the chat so we can see their responses.
So the chat window can be accessed down at the bottom of your Zoom controls. If you click on chat, it'll open up a space where you can send a message to everybody.
Okay, so once we get, we've got some responses. They got it. That person did. You see those chat people? Let's give them another. Oh, there we go.
They got it.
Now you see it. We do indeed. We speak. We listen twice as much as we speak and 4 to 5 times as much as we read and write. So listening skills are fundamental to learning a new language. In order for a student to have success in speaking a language, the student must be able first to understand the language being spoken. Yet we find that our students' listening comprehension often lags far behind their reading comprehension. And now let's take a look at why this is the case. And as you see, take a minute and let's look at that and read what we're seeing here. Number 2 is very important on that slide. And number 4 is part of our problem. So now that you've had a chance to look at the main points we're going to talk about here, why it's so difficult. Listening is one of the toughest skills to improve, simply because the students can't work at their own pace. They can read at a slower pace, or look up words in a dictionary, or work out the meaning of a sentence on a piece of paper before moving on. But they cannot do that when they are listening. In addition, when they listen to speech that occurs over the phone or an audio file you might provide in your tutoring session, because of technology and other things that go along with it, they don't have the benefit of facial expressions, body language to construct the meaning of what was said. We do not speak words the way they appear in print. And speech also burdens memory and attention, making it hard for learners to hold everything in their memory. All of this can lead to frustration on the part of the students. It makes them reluctant to engage in conversation with others or turn on the radio in their car. But we can deliberately help them strengthen their listening skills so that they build their confidence. Any question about that? Okay. Now you often ask, how do I teach a lesson? How do I structure it? Well, here we see, before listening, what do we do? For our students to set the stage. While listening, what do we do? And after listening. Before we get to the specific strategies, I hope you're thinking about this too. These 3 components of teaching listening are very important. Okay, we can move on. Before listening, let's give you a few seconds to take a read. Very important to get their prior knowledge about the subject. And look at that in red at the bottom. Very necessary with a foreign-born student. They're so uncomfortable and they do need reassurance. So let's look at that in more detail now that you've had a chance to read it. A reason to have some pre-listening activities in mind is really to put your student at ease and build their confidence about being able to understand a listening activity. You've heard us say before, activating prior knowledge in everything we do, reading and certainly in listening. You must ask students to brainstorm what they know about a topic before the listening activity, possibly based on a photo you show them or a mind map you ask them to create. You might ask them to predict what they will hear or write 3 questions they want answered from the material. You should also provide the context, and I might add the content. When students listen to a recording, it has been ripped out of a real life scenario. So we need to tell them, perhaps, that these are 2 friends talking on the phone, for instance, or this is a waiter in a restaurant taking orders from a couple celebrating a birthday. Previewing the vocabulary is a huge role in listening comprehension. Reducing confusion over vocabulary will leave the students with more headspace to grasp the meaning of the material. So we must set a clear task for the student to perform before they even listen. If they know the type of information to listen for, their performance will be higher. and their confidence will be raised. You also want to make it clear that it's not necessary to understand every single word to understand a message. And here is why. It has been suggested that we actually only need to understand 30% of the words we hear in order to grasp the meaning. Think of this as a warm-up activity of 10 minutes or so. Well, that's a lot for you to digest. Do you have any question at this point? Thanks, Laura. We will go to while listening. Notice the who and the what on there in red, especially for beginners. Okay, don't have your students listen for everything all at once. Play the recording or read the material 3 or 4 times. This is what's happening while they're listening. Ask them to listen for different aspects of the passage each time. Giving students something to look for makes them active listeners. The first time they listen, you might ask them to listen for a gist or generally what's happening. They might also listen for intonation, whether the speakers seem friendly or angry. Upon subsequent listenings, they might pay attention to details or make some inferences. Use authentic listening from everyday life. An example, the tutor might describe the morning routine. I got up at 7 o'clock, I put on the coffee, I brushed my teeth. And then the student has to tell you what you said. Remind tutors to talk with a normal speaking voice. Laurie cautioned me to tell you. Don't try to separate the words. If you pause between the words, this is not the way Americans speak. We kind of run it all together. Did you hear what I just did? I ran it all together. Okay. Now, after listening, to check for understanding, you might ask your students to answer comprehension questions by multiple choice, true, false. You might ask them to write 1 or 2 sentence summaries. And beginners might just only get a few words. They can write that down. To respond to ideas, you might ask them whether they agree with the speaker, what they would do in a similar situation, for instance, or something different. You could draw their attention to specific verb forms that are used or reduced forms. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes in more detail. Laurie's going to give us that. As a springboard, if you've listened to a conversation, you could even role play the conversation so they have a chance practicing the speech they just heard. They might write another line to the dialogue. And here's some activities, a strategy 1. So to our first strategy, which is offered here, which begins at the level of sounds. I am going to start with sounds and then move on to words and phrases and then entire passages of spoken English. Ideally, we want the student to capture the sounds and we have to help them hear those sounds. In all the world's languages, there are approximately 800 sounds. Most languages, including English, choose only around 40 of these to form words. English has around 42 sounds. So your student's native language very well might not include all the sounds we even use in English. You can see that this can prove to be a major difficulty for them. Research has been done comparing adult Japanese subjects' brains and American adult brains. Both are played a monotonous recording of rock, 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 lock, rock. Upon hearing the word lock, American brains show a spike in activity, but Japanese brain activity remains constant throughout the entire exercise because the Japanese, like the Korean and other Asian languages, don't distinguish between the L and the R sounds. The good news is that this same study showed that even with a limited amount of training, the Japanese students were able to tune their ears to hear the difference. One way we can tune their ears is to hear minimal pairs, and that's what this strategy is about. That's where there are two words that differ by only one sound, like rock, lock, or bet, beat. There in this packet, you're going to see what else is available to you. There are websites where your student can listen to words with troublesome sounds and choose what word they think they heard. This website will show two picture words and pronounce only one. The student clicks on the word or picture they think they heard. This is a good website to assign to your student as homework because they can not only listen to the words, they can repeat the pronunciation to work on speaking the skills. Laurie, you're going to give them the website at some point, I do believe.
Yes, they're going to
Okay.
get a packet that has a list of really useful websites as well as some of the activities that we're going to talk about here.
Okay, let's look a little bit more. Minimal practice pairs on our next slide is, this is another activity from your packet that is particularly good for beginners. You can show this worksheet to your student and read either 1A or 1B and ask the student to point to the sentence that she hears. That's even a website link. There is even a website link in your packet that will tell you what minimal pairs to focus on depending on your student's native tongue. Any questions so far about where we are going? Okay, Laurie, I guess you're going to talk about.
Yeah, so the second strategy has to do with this term that linguists use called reduced and connected speech. And what that is Americans kind of slur their words together, drop certain sounds, run words together. And when they're speaking at a normal conversational pace, and this can make it hard for students to hear. I'm going to show this short video that explains the concept of connected speech and what Americans do with some common examples for you. I'm going to speed it up here past the introduction.
One of the most important aspects of pronunciation and listening is to understand that Americans don't just speak fast, as many students believe, but that they connect their words and change the sounds of words. For example, what are you going to do becomes what are you going to do? Connected speech allows us to speak efficiently, saying the most in the shortest amount of time, and to speak with flow and music called rhythm. In this lesson, we will focus on how Americans link words together. Remember, understanding the rules of connected speech will not only help you to speak better, but will also help you understand native English speakers. Consonant plus vowel. When a word ends in a consonant sound and is followed by a word that starts with a vowel sound, the speaker should push that consonant sound forward and connect it to the vowel in the next word. For example, stop it becomes stop it. I need it becomes I need it. Play a song becomes play a song. Read a book becomes read a book. Consonant plus consonant. When a word ends in a consonant sound and the following word begins in the same or similar consonant sound, you will only pronounce that sound once by lengthening or holding the sound. You do not need to say the consonant sound twice. For example, best time becomes best time. Big grape becomes big grape. Good day becomes good day. Sit down becomes sit down. Listen and repeat. Sample sentences.
Okay, so that's sort of her explanation. This website on YouTube, Elemental English, has a whole series of videos, short videos. I certainly wouldn't go through all of this at once with your student, but occasionally you can play the video, and she's got these listen and repeat exercises where the student can listen to what they hear, very common reduced speech, and practice. So that might be something that you can do with your student. So we're gonna just take a break. You guys have been listening for about 25 minutes and play a little game. I have a joke here that has to do with unraveling this reduced and connected speech. Do I have a volunteer? Joan, I know you're not muted, so maybe you can help me out here.
No.
I'm gonna read the first knock knock joke on the screen here and see if you can tell me what the word letter is reduced from. What are the original two words? So knock knock,
Who's there?
letter.
Letter who?
Letter in, it's cold. So what does letter, you think, represent in terms of words that have been reduced and connected?
Letter.
You're asking me?
I'm asking you. Somebody just helped you out though.
Well, it's cold out. It's just cold out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even pronounce the D.
I'm talking about the word letter that the speaker is
Oh, I
using.
see. Letter. Okay.
It's sounding like something you put in your mailbox, but really what the speaker is saying is reduced two words together. I don't know who spoke up, but who's figured this out? What letter really means? Tony?
It's letter.
Yes. So, that's an example where those two consonants that come together just get smushed in together and into like one, it sounds like one word. Here's another one. Pam, since you're unmuted, can you help me out with this one? Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Oliver.
Oliver who?
Oliver friends are coming over.
So it's probably all of our or all of her friends.
You got it.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. So that's like three words that get smushed into sounding just like one word. So how can you teach your student about this? You can show the series of videos that I just showed on the previous slide. You can also take very common sentences that get reduced and connected and just write it out for your students so they can see how we reduce these forms together. So for instance, we rarely when we're chatting with somebody say, I am going to go. somewhere. We often reduce the I am into a contraction I'm, and our to sounds like ta, and going sounds like gonna. We even connect the going to into gonna. So it sounds like I'm gonna go, even though there really were 5 different words there. So on very common connected speech, you can kind of break it down for your students so that they can see how you get from point A to point B. One of the activities that's in the packet I'm going to send you is an audio to a conversation that makes use of a lot of connected speech. And this is a transcript from it. The worksheet in your packet actually has some blanks, fill in the blanks, where the student can put down part of the conversation that they're listening to. So you can see, you're so tall now, instead of you are, comes out sounding like you're. That is sort of the main connected speech, reduced speech that is used in this particular dialogue. So if you were to do this, you would first, teach how these 2 words get contracted and then reduced. How would you do a post listening and after listening exercise with a student? What could you do to expand on this? Does anybody have any ideas?
I can make a comment, Laurie.
Mhm.
Excuse me. I struggled working with students on this reduce. I confess to Laurie that I never felt very successful in it. But what I really found is consistency, using words that the student is very familiar with. For instance, in describing my morning, how I get up and I make coffee and I brush my teeth, and I rushed it all together like we all normally speak. Very small amounts of dialogue offered to the student, and see what the student could catch that could be broken up into individual words. But if the words and content was very familiar to the student, what the student does in the morning, because don't forget, I practice consistently each morning. I would have my students have a conversation me. What was the first 15 or 10 minutes, a few points, small amounts of words to share what happened in the morning before we got together for our lesson. So consistency and familiar words help them hear what this reduced and connected speech is really all about. That's just a suggestion and a confession that I struggled with it myself because I found it difficult for the foreign-born student to catch.
So we've been talking about, individual sounds with those minimal pairs and making sure students can catch sounds that may not be native to their home country language. And now we're talking about how some of those sounds get reduced. I'm going to shift gears now and move from just the sound and word level to kind of whole passages that students listen to. And the third strategy is let them listen to some conversations. The curriculum that we provide in Burlington English has lots of recorded conversations. The packet that I'm going to give you has websites that you can go to listen to other ones. And often those conversations will use that reduced speech, and they will use American idioms and phrasal verbs. Phrasal verb is sort of like an idiom in that it's where you take a preposition and a verb and connect them together, but it has a slightly different meaning than what those words mean literally. So when we talk about break down, we're usually not talking, we might be talking about a car, that is failing to operate, but we could mean somebody starts to cry, that they broke down, chipping in, we're not taking a hammer to anything, we're opening our wallet. So previewing those things to a student beforehand can help expand their knowledge of phrases and lingo that they might hear here in America. So to model this for you, when we talked about what do you do before the student actually begins listening, here's how I would set up a conversation about an order that's taking place in a restaurant. I might find a picture on the internet, which is where I found this one, and say, you know, who are these people in the picture? What do you think is going on? What are they doing? To get the student thinking and pulling out of their head what vocabulary they already know, taking orders, waitress, restaurant. And then you might ask them as a warm-up, well, where do you like to go to eat? What are some of your favorite restaurants? What do you like to order? I would preview the conversation before I played it for my student and pull out any idioms or vocabulary that I think my student might have trouble with. In this case, there is a conversation about dressing, like salad dressing. And I would make sure my student understood what that meant, that it's not clothing, it's the sauce that we put on our salad. And then I would play the conversation, and on this slide, I put down this website because I think it's fantastic, esl-lab.com, that has oodles of short conversations at 3 different levels, easy, intermediate, advanced, with questions that you can listen to or questions you can answer online afterwards, and some other activities that you can do. But this is, I would set this up by saying this is a man placing an order in a restaurant, and we're going to be listening. Maybe the first time we're just going to listen for what does he order. The second time we listened, we might try to get question number 3. What is the problem happening at the restaurant why they can't serve pies? So let's listen.
Hi, welcome to Heavenly Pies. May I take your order?
Yes, I'd like the chicken fried steak.
Okay, would you like fries, bread, or rice with your meal?
I'll take the rice.
Would you care for anything to drink?
Yeah, I'll take a medium orange juice.
I'm sorry, we only have large or small.
Well, in that case, I'll have a small one.
Okay, a small juice. And what kind of dressing would you like with your salad? It comes with the fried steak.
What dressings do you have?
We have French, Italian, blue cheese, and ranch.
Oh, ranch, please.
Would you like anything else?
Well, I'd like to see your pie menu. That's the main reason why I like to dine here.
Oh, I'm sorry, but we aren't serving pies today.
Huh? I thought this was Heavenly Pies restaurant.
Well, it usually is, but Dave, our baker, slipped on a banana in the kitchen 2 days ago and hurt his leg.
Wow.
He'll be out for at least 2 weeks. In the meantime, we're serving ice cream sundaes instead. Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, in that case, I'll have an ice cream sundae.
Okay, I'll be back with your order in a few minutes.
Okay, so let's test your listening skills. What does the man order in the restaurant?
Steak. Chicken fried steak, yeah.
You got it. And what kind of dressing does he want on his salad?
Ranch.
Mhm. And why can't the restaurant serve him a pie for dessert?
Baker was hurt.
You got it. So your student may have to listen to this multiple times to get all of that information.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. As Irene said, just, let them kind of cue them up to listen to a particular piece of information each time. So if we were doing, I gotta skip through this. What kind of post-listening activity would you do after you did this listening to a restaurant order?
Maybe have them tell you in their own words what happened.
Mm-hmm. Giving you a summary. What did they catch? Excellent. Anybody have another idea?
Ask them about their favorite restaurant and what they like to order.
Sure, you can turn that into a general conversation piece.
You
Any
might
other
need,
ideas?
you might need to explain what is chicken fried steak.
Yes, right. Especially since we're not in the South, right? Mm-hmm. This particular website that I showed you will provide you with the transcript of the conversation, and you could also use that to role play. And then, you know, of course, you could always follow the general script, but use different food items and different drinks that might be something your student is more likely to order than chicken fried steak. Okay, any questions about conversations?
And what level would this this particular exercise be? A beginner, intermediate, or advanced?
This is considered beginner, but on the website, but I would say it's more intermediate.
Okay.
For a beginner, it might be, you know, hello, what would you like to order? I would like a hamburger. How would you like that done? Medium. And that's the end of it, right? It might be a much simpler conversation, shorter, simpler conversation. The advanced on this website is very sophisticated conversations to listen to. Okay, so I'm going to shift back to Irene, who's going to talk about our next strategy.
Okay, on this one, I'm sure you have a lot more ideas, but gap fill activities are some people call them closed passages. You might hear that expression. You can do while they're listening activity that can be used with all levels of students, of course, making the vocabulary at the familiar level of the student based on beginner, middle, intermediate, and so on. And they can respond to fill in the blanks or the gaps for oral kinds of oral messages, either things you read or recordings you have access to. Fill in the blank activities are a way to encourage students to listen for particular words. I've added here, you might even want to use holiday celebrations, which are familiar to folks. Or sharing recipes are a possibility too. If you wanted to teach a particular grammar feature, such as phrasal verbs, Laurie pointed that out to you before, that's a verb with perhaps a preposition. You could take a transcript and delete the verb tenses, then read the transcript or play the recording and ask your student to pay attention to that particular grammar feature. I might add, very difficult if you try to teach more than one tense at a time. If you're teaching present tense continuing, stick to that to the best of your ability so that there's a focus. Okay, we're going to look at the next fill in the gaps. And I think this is very important. How many times have you been in a store and heard, attention everyone? Well, here is, what do you think on fill in the gaps? Attention blank, the store will close in minutes. Please finish your shopping and take your blank to a cashier. Again, it's authentic. It's something that happens, and you can write a simple public announcement that your student might hear somewhere and just take out some of the words. And this is an example. Anyone who want to give it a shot? Somebody want to jump in?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Attention shoppers, the store will close in 15 minutes. Please finish your shopping and take your goods to a cashier.
Excellent. You got it right. Okay, the next one is another fill in the gaps. And this is an informational passage. And as we show you here, really intermediate or advanced. I think it's quite sophisticated. Take a minute and read it, and then I'll comment on it. For an intermediate or advanced student, you could read or play a recording of information on an everyday topic. This exercise pertains to a lecture about what Americans eat. As a pre-listening activity, you could have them read the partial transcript, and I say partial because this is a lot of information, and make a prediction about what percentages might go into these gaps. This will activate their prior knowledge about the topic. Then, when they listen, they can check to see if their predictions were accurate. And it's quite sophisticated, as you can see. I struggled when I tried to answer them myself. I had to do some thinking. There are several gap fill exercises in your packet and links to more than you can find online. And I do think it must be something that they would be familiar with. I'm not so sure about percentages, but it could lead to a nice discussion with your students.
Irene, this is Laurie. I'm just going to jump in here because I wanted to say that Burlington English has a lot of reading passages, and any one of those can be turned into a listening activity.
Right.
You can take, copy that written material, strip out every 10th word or whatever, and turn it into a gap fill, and just read the completed passage to your student and let them fill it in. So that is a way to go from a reading activity into a listening activity.
Are most of the tutors using Burlington, Laurie? Is that
Most of them are, but not all.
Not all. Okay. Okay, we can go on and we can look at strategy 5. I'm going to preface this by saying we have some studies that show physical use of understanding of words and activities. They tell us, the neuropsychologists, the brain connects to the doing more readily than just the telling or the reading. So as you see here, total physical response is the doing. Drawing a picture again is the doing. Total physical response is the term used when we ask our students to show their understanding by doing something physical. For an absolute beginner, you might ask them to shut the door or turn to a certain page in their book. For an intermediate or an advanced student, you might read them a story and then ask them to arrange strips of paper, slips of paper that have been cut up with the parts of the story and put those pieces of paper in order to make the story. One of the exercises in your packet are directions to drawing a picture. This activity is a great way to practice understanding of prepositions. Words like under, over, as you tell a student to draw a lamp on the table and a cat under the table. You can see how that would be very important in terms of physically learning preposition. You could find a tutorial for almost everything on the internet, from making a paper airplane to making vegetable soup. You could do the tutorial together, or you could assign it as homework. Ask your student to snap a picture of the finished result on their phone to show you the next time that you meet. You could verbally guide your students through the instructions on how to download a pronunciation app for their smartphone as another example. Are there any questions about the physical aspects of doing? Because they tell us that the learner learns more readily when there's a physical action.
Irene, I do have a question.
Sure.
In my first reaction to this, it feels like reading. How is this listening? How is this listening? Like to have a student complete a project following the instructions, for example. Am I reading the instructions and they simply listen and must do it? or am I giving them instruction? You know what I'm saying?
You can do it any way you want, but I do think give instructions like you're going to see in our next slide. Give instruction and then the student performs what the student thought you said to do. But you may reverse it. Then you may even have the student tell you to do what was just done. Reverse it. See if they heard what you said. See if they can reproduce what you said. And also a small amount at a time. I love the next page, and it's Laurie's wonderful doing. Let's look at this. Here is a nice example. Okay, I am the tutor. Draw a table. Ooh. Put a book on the table. Put a rug under the table. Put a chair next to the table. I might now have the student tell me. And yes, a piece of crap paper could be there. You can't necessarily see it. Might show it on the phone, how you manage to follow the directions. I think it's a fun activity and it really helps them begin to understand prepositions. I hope I answered your questions. Great, you shook your head, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. We look at the next one. Following directions on a map is a very good idea as well. And of course, sometimes this might be for a student who has a little bit more vocabulary or greater understanding, intermediate, I guess. But you know, you can always try a simple form of a map as well. Another activity about following directions is to use a map. This directly relates to our CASAS test. If your students travel, they will likely have to follow the directions. First, make sure your student knows that the directions, what is north, what is south, what is east, and what is west. That must be understood. Then verbally give them directions. Ask them for an example to start at the bank. You wait for them to see if they can find that. On Station Road, you actually tell them, and head north on West Street. Then turn east on Main Road. Ask them what they will find on the south side of the road. And there they will find a park. And of course, this takes a lot of patience for you to help them understand the directionality as well as the places that they hope to get to. As a post-listening activity, as I said before to the other question, ask them to give you directions starting north at, let's say, the fruit shop and then go east or west. For beginning students, it might be only one direction at a time. Okay. So far, no other questions? Okay, Laurie, we're going to go on to taking dictation. Laurie, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So dictation, where a student is writing down something they think you hear, is another way for them to practice their listening skills. And then you can check right away if they have caught your meeting. So there are some ideas on this slide for things that you can dictate to your student. Of course, it goes from very simple for a beginner into very sophisticated things for a more advanced student. A phone message is something very simple. Again, an announcement, as we did earlier, having the student write down what they heard. Maybe you pretend they are calling their bank and finding out what the balance is in their checking account. Just a simple line from everyday conversation. And there are even resources that your student can go to on their own that I've included in your packet, where they can listen to just a short snippet of audio and they can transcribe what they thought they heard online and check their answers. So one activity, this would be for a more intermediate student, which also kind of leads into just teaching about American culture, and for you perhaps to learn about your students' home culture, is to talk about a proverb. And there's a whole bunch of them, you know, that we use in the United States, like a picture is worth 1,000 words. That's something short that you can ask your student to write down and then talk about what it means. And very often I have found students have a similar proverb in their home country, and you can ask them to share that with you. So it leads into some conversation. But they're also learning, you know, an idiom or a proverb that they might hear in this country. So the final strategy is watching a video. They can open up, again, your student to American culture, and they don't need to watch a whole movie. Every movie that's been made in the last 10 years at least has a trailer of only 1 or 2 minutes that you can find on YouTube. Very often TV shows have short snippets of episodes. Music videos are out there. For more advanced students, you know, they might listen to a TED Talk type lecture on something that they're interested in, or they might watch a tutorial about something they're interested in. And unlike just the basic audio, watching a video gives them that benefit of being able to see body movement and facial expressions and other scenes to help convey the meaning of what they're listening to. So we suggest, you know, trying to find a short piece of video, but don't use subtitles, because then your student is going to be reading instead of listening. So you can play it silently without the sound and ask your student to just guess what the video is about, and then play it with the audio so that they are listening. And you're going to ask them, well, was this what you thought was happening? Proven. You can freeze when you're playing a video with your student. You can stop it wherever you want and ask your students, you know, what just happened? Who are these people? What do you think is going to happen next? And again, play it to confirm their, you can ask them to write a subtitle for a scene they've just watched. After you've watched it, you could give them some sentence strips of what happened. May not be actual dialogue. It might be they argued about what time their daughter should come home from her date, and organize those sentence strips in order based on their memory to see how well they listened. And you can just ask them questions, you know, about the content of what they've heard to check for their understanding. So there's a variety of different activities that you can do with videos. This is a website, learnenglishfeelgood.com, that has a number of short video clips from movies. This is more for the advanced student than the beginner. And it'll show you a picture from the video. This particular one is from The Great Gatsby. I don't know if you, with Leo DiCaprio, if you guys have seen that movie. But I would show my student, again, this image and say, you know, where are these people at? Well, looks like they're at some fancy party, right? What time period do you think this is taking place based on maybe the way these people are dressed and their hair? And I would probably set this up for my student by saying, this is a famous American novel that was turned into a movie. Again, I would preview vocabulary before my student listened to it. And I would, again, ask my student to listen the first time to catch just one thing, like, what does the woman remember? And then I would play it again and try to ask more questions. So we're going to close out our last strategy here. I'm going to play this clip to just give you an idea of what's available to you.
I thought I might see you here.
Hello.
I remembered you lived next door.
It's like an amusement park.
Shall we?
Did you get an invitation?
People aren't invited to Gatsby's.
Well, I was. Seems I'm the only one. Who is this Gatsby?
He was a German spy during the war.
Teddy Barton, Nick Carraway.
A German spy?
No. He's the Kaiser's assassin.
I heard he killed a man once.
It's true. Kills for fun, free of charge. He's certainly richer than God.
You don't really believe he killed a man, do you?
Well, let's go find him and you can ask him yourself.
So that's just taking one scene, lots of dialogue, and then you could ask your students some of these questions. And again, you may have to listen multiple times. Let's check how much you guys caught. At the beginning, what does the woman say she remembers? Anybody catch that?
Where the man lives.
Good, Tony. What does the man compare the party to?
An amusement park.
Mm-hmm. Did they both get an invitation?
The man.
Mm-hmm. And this is where it's shifting into more advanced critical thinking. Do you think knows Gatsby?
No.
Are they friends?
No.
Okay. And there were some rumors that people told Nick about Gatsby. Which one wasn't one of the rumors cited?
Gambling.
Spy.
No, one of the rumors was that he was a spy and he killed a man, but not that he had won his money gambling. So that's just an example of, something that's more lighthearted that you can do with your student or they can do on their own. So that is the last strategy we had. I want you to think for a minute about the different strategies that we presented. There were 7 things that you can do to help your student with listening. Open up your chat window and don't hit enter yet. I want you to just in your chat window type as many of the strategies that you remember. And when I tell everybody to hit enter, then do it. And what we're going to see is a cascade of strategies coming back at us. So just type as many as you can remember.
Oops.
Type it into chat. Okay, does everybody have their chat filled out? Now hit enter and we should see a cascade.
I see a cascade, yeah.
So fill in the blank, preview, reading and writing, using proverbs, minimal pairs, reduced and connected speech, dictation. Mary, you've got quite a few here. Watching videos, following directions, connecting
I'm
sound.
sorry, Laurie, I cannot do that. It doesn't enlarge on my chart here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. So
It
just
doesn't
to
increase.
review, here were the 7 strategies. Minimal pairs. So we started with making sure your student can hear sounds in the English language that might be tricky, how Americans smush their words together, and then different types of listening activities, conversations, maybe informational passages that you read or they listen to while they're filling in gaps, dictation where they're writing, watching videos together. So I'm going to stop the recording now.